Hello, and welcome back to the Circular Economy Excellence podcast. I'm Henrik Hvid Jensen. In this episode, we are diving into chapter 8 of my book, which focuses on the 6R recycle. This chapter represents the final step in a 1+5R model, exploring how manufacturers can close the loop by ensuring materials are reintegrated into the production cycle instead of becoming waste. As with previous episodes, I'm using AI to create and interpret the content in a virtual discussion between two artificial minds. This will help me break down this chapter's key takeaways and bring fresh perspectives to the conversation. Recycling is often seen as a default sustainability strategy, but in a circular economy, it plays a very specific role. It's the last resource when reuse, repair, refurbishment, and remanufacturing are no longer viable. In this chapter, I break down key strategies for manufacturers to integrate recycling into their business models. It's about resource harvesting that is efficiently collect and process end-of-life products for material recovery. It's circular sourcing that integrates recycled materials into manufacturing to reduce reliance on virgin resources. I cover how global legislation and extended producer responsibility reshape recycling obligations. You also need to build customer trust to ensure recycled materials are perceived as high quality and valuable. Recycling is about much more than waste management. It's a strategic move that can enhance supply chain resilience, reduce cost, and strengthen brand reputation. So, please sit back and listen as my AI co-hosts explore how manufacturers can turn waste into value and make recycling a profitable, scalable part of their circular economy strategy.
Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're going deep on recycling. We're cracking open Chapter 8 of Henrik Hvid Jensen's book, Circular Economy Opportunities and Pathways for Manufacturers.
It really is fascinating how recycling has gone from just being about the environment to like a core business idea.
Yeah.
And we'll be looking at all of the innovations, the challenges, and the economic opportunities too.
Yeah, I often hear about companies going green and embracing sustainability, but like what does recycling actually look like, in the real world? What makes it important for manufacturers specifically?
Well, recycling is kind of like the last stop for a product, right? It determines whether it's going to end up in a landfill or get a second life. But what's interesting is that at this final stage, a product's value is usually the lowest. So it can be tough to make the economics of recycling work.
So it's almost like the less valuable something is, the harder it can be to justify recycling it.
Yeah, exactly. The book really highlights this challenge for manufacturers.
So how are manufacturers tackling this challenge?
There are a couple of main approaches that the chapter outlines. Resource harvesting and circular sourcing. Resource harvesting is kind of the traditional approach, collecting and processing materials like plastic bottles and aluminum cans.
Right, that's the recycling that we're all used to. But you mentioned circular sourcing. What makes that different?
Circular sourcing goes beyond just collecting and processing. It's about figuring out how to use those recycled materials to make new products. The goal is to rely less on brand new resources and create like a closed loop system.
Now, that sounds efficient. Closing the loop. Are there companies doing this successfully?
There are, and Dell is a great example mentioned in the book. They're actually using plastics from old computers to make parts for new ones.
Wow, so they're not just recycling old computers. They're using those materials to make new products. That's impressive. How did they make this system work?
One key thing was design for disassembly. They started designing their computers so they would be easy to take apart, making it easier to separate out the valuable materials. They also had to partner with recyclers and develop the infrastructure to collect and process the material.
So it sounds like a pretty big project. It's not as simple as just tossing old computers into a bin and hoping for the best.
Exactly. It requires a strategic approach, and Dell's success offers a lot of insights for other companies. However, not all materials are created equal when it comes to recycling.
Okay, so what are some of the challenges with recycling?
Think about advanced plastics or composites. They can be really hard to break down and recycle using the methods we're used to.
Right, like those clamshell packages. I can never open them and they don't seem recyclable.
You got it. These complex materials are a challenge, but companies are coming up with new technologies to address it. The book highlights companies like Ineos and Finia. They're using chemical recycling to break down polyethylene terephthalate, or PET.
So even those tricky plastics can be recycled. What is chemical recycling and how does it work?
So unlike mechanical recycling, which involves shredding and melting, chemical recycling uses chemical processes to break plastic down into its basic building blocks. This allows for the creation of high-quality recycled materials that can be used to make new products.
So it's like giving those plastics a whole new life, not just downcycling them into lower-grade materials.
Exactly. And it's not just technology. Legislation is also playing a big role in pushing for more recycled materials.
You're talking about extended producer responsibility, right? I've heard of it, but I'm not totally sure what it means.
Basically, EPR policies hold manufacturers responsible for what happens to their products at the end of their life. It shifts the responsibility from towns and consumers to the companies that actually make the products.
So it's like saying, you made it, now you deal with it. It makes sense to hold manufacturers responsible for the whole life cycle.
Right. The chapter mentions the EU's Critical Raw Materials Act, which promotes recovering these materials from waste, including stuff used in electronics and batteries.
It feels like there's a real global push towards this circular economy.
Definitely, Australia's critical minerals strategy is another example. It's designed to secure the supply of critical minerals through things like recycling. This global shift is pushing companies to rethink how they design products.
So designing products with recycling in mind right from the start.
Exactly. That's where design for disassembly comes in. Manufacturers are also using modular design and component standardization.
Modular design. So instead of things being glued or welded together, they'd be designed to be easily taken apart and sorted for recycling.
Exactly. This makes it easier to separate materials and recover valuable parts. Like Timberland, they design their boots so the outsoles can be removed for recycling, which reduces their reliance on adhesives.
It's really interesting to see how design can be such a big part of making recycling more efficient. But what about the companies themselves? What kind of control do manufacturers have over how their products are recycled? Or if they're even recycled at all?
That's a great question. The chapter talks about different ways manufacturers approach this. End-of-life product control. It goes from like a sell and forget model, where they don't do anything after selling the product, to more proactive strategies.
Sell and forget. That doesn't sound very responsible.
You're right. It's definitely the least sustainable approach. It leaves the responsibility for recycling to the consumer or the city, but there are companies being more proactive, like Pandora, the jewelry company.
Oh, interesting. What are they doing?
Pandora uses 100% recycled silver and gold in their products. They might not have a specific program to take back old jewelry, but they make sure their suppliers follow strict sustainability standards.
So they're focusing on responsible sourcing,
Yeah,
even if they're not directly managing the recycling process.
exactly. It's a good example of how companies can contribute to the circular economy at different points in the process, but some companies are taking a more hands-on approach.
Let's talk about those proactive approaches like take-back programs. How do those work?
They're about brands closing the loop with their customers. Timberland offers a discount to customers who return their old products, and Dell provides prepaid shipping labels for recycling electronics.
I like that. It encourages people to do the right thing. It's good to know that my old boots or laptop could be getting a second life, but I can only imagine the logistics of getting all those products back must be crazy. It's like a reverse supply chain.
Exactly. And that's a big challenge, reverse logistics. It's about getting those old products back to recycling centers. And it can be really complicated, especially for big or bulky items.
I'm picturing mountains of old electronics. That seems really challenging. How are companies managing all of this? Are there any examples in the book?
There are, and the chapter highlights some really cool examples, like wind turbine blades. They're huge and made of complex materials, which makes them super hard to recycle.
Okay, that's next level recycling.
Definitely. But companies are finding innovative solutions. The book talks about Vestas, a wind turbine manufacturer. They partnered with universities and experts to develop a two-step process.
Okay, I'm listening. How does it work?
First, they break down the composite materials. Then they convert the resin into virgin-grade materials.
Wow. So they're turning old wind turbine blades into new ones.
Pretty much. One of the biggest challenges was figuring out how to break down the epoxy resins. They also had to think about how to transport those massive blades to recycling facilities.
It's like a giant puzzle figuring out how to recycle these enormous things.
Exactly. And it shows how collaboration and innovation can tackle even the toughest recycling challenges. And it's not just about traditional recycling. The book also explores repurposing.
Repurposing, so finding new uses for old products without reprocessing them too much, like turning tires into playground surfaces. I've seen that.
Right.
Or that company that takes used wine corks and turns them into things like flooring and yoga blocks.
You got it. Recork is a great example of how repurposing can give old products a new life, reducing waste and creating new income at the same time.
I love that.
Yeah.
But we've talked a lot about the challenges of getting these materials back. What happens once they are collected and ready for their second life? Where does circular sourcing fit in?
That's where the magic of circular sourcing happens. It's about integrating these recycled materials back into the manufacturing process, closing the loop on the material's life cycle.
So it's not just about using recycled materials, it's about making sure those materials keep flowing back into production. Are there any companies that are really good at this?
There are some really impressive examples in the book. One that stands out is Ford partnering with HP. They're taking used 3D printing powders and parts and turning them into car parts.
They're using recycled 3D printing materials to make car parts. That's amazing. What are the benefits of doing that?
Well, the recycled parts are lighter, cheaper, and more durable. It's a win-win for Ford HP and the environment.
Wow, that's a game changer. Seems like technology is a big part of making all this possible.
You're absolutely right. The chapter talks about how digitalization is changing everything about recycling. It's affecting things from managing the supply chain to getting customers involved.
So are we talking about using technology to track products, optimize waste management, build stronger recycling ecosystems, and even encourage people to recycle more?
That's it. It's about using data and technology to make recycling smarter, more efficient, and ultimately more successful. But let's talk more about digitalization and how it's impacting the circular economy after we come back from a quick break.
Okay, so we're back and ready to dive into this digitalization stuff. It sounds like a huge topic.
It is, and it's amazing to see how technology is really pushing the circular economy forward.
So how is technology actually changing things when it comes to recycling?
Well, think of it like this technology is making everything about recycling better. The book talks about 5 key areas: internal IT systems, business ecosystems, connected products, customer experience, and data-driven circularity.
5 areas. Wow. So technology is really everywhere in the recycling world. Let's start with internal IT systems. What kind of impact are they having?
Imagine if supply chains could track products from the moment they're made all the way to when they're recycled.
Like a digital passport for every product? It would give you so much data.
You got it. And that data can help make recycling more efficient. Companies can use it to make better decisions about when to collect products, how to process the materials, and even design products for better recyclability in the future.
So it's about making sure valuable materials don't end up in the trash. What about those business ecosystems? How does technology affect those?
Think of a digital platform that connects everyone involved in recycling. Manufacturers, recyclers, logistics companies, even consumers.
So it's like a matchmaking service for the circular economy.
Exactly. These platforms make it easier to collaborate, share data, and manage complex recycling operations. Like matching platforms can connect companies that have recyclable materials with companies that need those materials.
It's like a marketplace for recycled materials. That's amazing. Now I'm curious about connected products. What does that even mean?
Imagine a washing machine with sensors that tell the manufacturer when it's getting old and ready to be recycled.
So the washing machine is basically saying, hey, I'm ready to retire. Come get me.
Exactly. Connected products provide valuable data that can help with recycling. And this leads us to customer experience. How can technology improve the customer's role in recycling?
I'm glad we're talking about the customers.
Yeah.
We have a big role to play in making things more sustainable.
Absolutely. Digital tools can make it easier for people to recycle. Think about an app that tells you how to recycle things properly, or gives you rewards for recycling, or shows you where to drop off your recyclables.
I love that. It would make recycling easier and more fun. Okay, what about data-driven circularity?
This is where it gets really interesting. By using big data and analytics, manufacturers can get incredible insights about recycling.
I'm all ears. Tell me more.
They can spot patterns, predict trends, and make smarter decisions about their processes. For example, data can show them which products are being recycled the most, which materials are most valuable, and where there are problems in the recycling system.
So it's about using data to make recycling more efficient and profitable.
Exactly. And the chapter gives some cool examples of how companies are using data.
Give me an example.
Well, one company used data analytics to figure out why their products were ending up in landfills.
And what did they find?
They found that a lot of their products were being thrown away just because people didn't know how to recycle them properly.
Wow. So it wasn't that the products were broken or outdated, people just didn't know what to do with them.
Right. So they launched an education campaign using a mobile app to teach people how to recycle their products.
So they used data to solve a real problem.
I love that.
And it worked. Their recycling rates went up a lot after they launched the app.
That's a great story. It shows how powerful data can be. But how do companies actually put these ideas into practice? It's one thing to have data, but how do they use it? That's where the capability map comes in. It's a guide in the chapter that shows manufacturers the key things they need to focus on for successful recycling.
Like a roadmap for circularity. Awesome. Tell me more.
It covers everything from product design to end-of-life management to digitalization. It's a framework for dealing with all the challenges of recycling.
So there's an actual plan to make this happen.
Exactly. And the book explains each part of the capability map with advice and examples for companies.
It sounds like a useful resource for companies that are serious about recycling. But what about the employees? How are they affected by all of this?
That's a great point. Moving to a circular economy means everyone needs to change how they think and work.
So it's not just about new technology. It's about making sure employees have the knowledge and skills to succeed.
Right. Companies need to invest in training to help employees understand circularity and how their jobs contribute to sustainability.
What kind of skills are we talking about?
Everything from design engineers learning how to design for disassembly to supply chain managers learning about reverse logistics. Even marketing and sales teams need to know how to talk about circular products to customers.
It sounds like a big change for everyone, but I bet there are some exciting new job opportunities too.
Absolutely. There's a growing need for people with expertise in things like circular design, materials, science, reverse logistics, and data analytics.
So the circular economy is not just good for the planet, it's also creating new opportunities for people.
Exactly. It's a win-win for businesses, the environment, and the people who work in these industries. And speaking of people, let's talk about you, the listener, and how you fit into all of this.
Yes, we all have a part to play in moving to a circular economy.
Absolutely. By understanding the power of recycling and making good choices, you can help create a more sustainable future.
So it's not just about putting our trash in the right bin, it's about making conscious choices and pushing for better systems.
Exactly. When consumers demand more sustainable products, it forces companies to innovate and invest in circular economy solutions. Your choices have a big impact on the whole system.
That's a powerful thought. It's good to know that our actions can make a difference.
And it's not just about what we do individually, it's about working together. If we all work together, we can create a world where resources are valued, waste is reduced, and innovation is encouraged.
What a great message. This conversation has been really inspiring. Before we finish our deep dive, I'd love to hear your final thoughts. What's the biggest takeaway for the listener?
The circular economy is becoming more and more important, and recycling is a key part of it. When manufacturers understand the opportunities and the challenges, they can reduce their impact on the environment and find new ways to grow their businesses.
So sustainability is not just a trend, it's a smart way to do business.
Exactly. And for you, the listener, the next time you recycle something, remember that you're not just throwing something away, you're helping to create something new. It's about seeing the value in things we used to think of as trash and realizing that we're all part of a connected system.
That's a perfect way to end our conversation.
Until next time, keep diving deep.
We've talked about so much when it comes to recycling, from those tough-to-recycle materials to how powerful digitalization can be. It's a big topic for sure.
Yeah, it really is. And manufacturers have a huge role to play in moving towards this circular economy.
And people like me need to make smart choices and support sustainable companies.
Exactly. It's a team effort. And the book actually has some great advice for companies that are new to recycling. It gives them a checklist to follow to see if recycling is feasible, how to set up a supply chain for those recycled materials, and how to make their whole operation more circular.
A checklist. I love checklists. What are some of the things on it?
Well, one of the first things is to figure out if recycling actually makes financial sense. Look at the costs and benefits for specific materials. That way, companies are basing their decisions on data and not just good intentions.
Right. Recycling shouldn't be a financial burden. It should be an investment in a better future.
Exactly. The checklist also talks about making sure the materials you use can actually be recycled in the first place.
Yeah, it wouldn't make sense to design something for recycling if the materials can't be processed properly.
Exactly. And it also says it's important to find reliable suppliers for recycled materials, so you have a consistent stream of good quality stuff coming in.
So you need to have good partners and systems in place to keep those materials moving in a loop. What else does the checklist say?
It says it's important to follow all the rules and regulations and to teach your employees the best ways to recycle.
It sounds like this author, Henrik H. Jensen, is giving manufacturers a real roadmap to embrace recycling and make it part of their business.
He really is. That checklist is super valuable for companies that want to make this transition smoothly. When we look back at this deep dive into his book, it's clear that a lot of progress is being made in the world of recycling.
I feel really inspired by all the creativity and innovation we've talked about.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And digitalization is playing a huge role in all of it.
It's great to see how technology is helping to make recycling more efficient, transparent, and successful overall.
The future of recycling is bright, and it's all thanks to the hard work of manufacturers, consumers, and innovators who want to make the world a better place.
Well said. That's a great note to end on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of recycling. Until next time.
I hope today's AI-powered conversation helped highlight the true role of recycling in the circular economy. If you take away 3 key insights from this discussion, then notice that recycling is the last step, not the first. While essential, it should only come after all other strategies, reuse, repair, redistribution, refurbishment, remanufacturing, have been explored. Advanced recycling and circular sourcing are game changers, from chemical recycling for complex materials to tracking technologies that optimize reverse logistics. Manufacturers must integrate innovation to make recycling efficient and profitable. Legislation and consumer trust will shape the future. With extended producer responsibility regulations and customer demand for sustainable materials growing, manufacturers must proactively design for recyclability and communicate the value of recycled materials. Recycling is a rapidly evolving field, and new insights, technologies, and regulations constantly shape the landscape. That's why I continue to add fresh insights and updates at circularpathwaysbook.com so we can stay ahead together. Until next time, keep materials in circulation, keep value flowing, and keep building a cleaner, more resilient, and more competitive future.